So in August 2002, I read this article that Franny had written in The Guardian saying that there were a couple of tickets left to the premiere of her film Drowned Out. I went along to the screening and it really was, you know, one of my life's biggest turning points. I just decided then and there that this was exactly the sort of thing I should be doing with my life, and I started volunteering with Franny. I'd only known her like a couple of months, and she was like, right, we're going to Amsterdam to a documentary festival, book the travel. And so of course I just went to book a flight, and I was just about to press pay with the credit card, and she was like, what are you doing? I mean, I didn't even know why a train would be better than a flight. I had no idea really what she was referring to. It was just, she said, book a train, so I did. I didn't want to question her, so I was just, okay, yep, whatever. Oh, yeah, yep, climate change. Oh, yep.
Is that okay for everyone?
6 years later, it was, we were putting the finishing touches on the opening sequence of our new film.
So here we are down in the dungeon at the Royal College of Art, and we are creating the beginning of the universe. It's all taking place in there.
Here you go.
Yeah.
Here we go.
Oh, sorry.
Right, that's all right, that's okay.
Yeah, beginning of the universe. Take 15.
Coming up.
Yeah, that's very beautiful. Hi, that was so great.
So is that a scrap take, would you say?
Yeah,
or
scrap that one.
No.
It all started way back in 2002 with an idea to pinch the structure of Steven Soderbergh's film Traffic, which is 6 interweaving human stories, which is just a fantastic way to look at an international issue, a very complicated international issue, in his case the drugs trade, but in our case oil and climate change, and we were going to call it Crude. Here, Lizzie, give us yours. You can give us the update.
In 2004, Franny sat me down in a cafe in Soho, I'll never forget, and said that she was offering me the job of being producer on her new climate change and oil documentary. She basically said, I think you can do it, but you have to give up everything else in your life. Like, you have to quit hockey, you have to quit your volunteering, no more of this clubbing, socialising kind of thing.
Because of the absolute, crisis situation that we are in regard to the climate, I really wanted to make a film. Well, there was no point making a film unless it went completely, totally mainstream, as in every multiplex in the land or every multiplex cinema in the world. And so to do that, it was clear that I really needed a producer who was on a much bigger league than me.
I just instinctively thought, yeah, let's do this, because I liked her films, and I liked this idea of 2 different styles that could come together, and and that the end product might be, a film grounded in the sort of truth that Franny deals with in her other films, that I might be able to help her bring it to a much bigger audience.
I'd had the experience with McLibel that I tried to get a commission, but I couldn't because the people had been sued by McDonald's in the past, the TV companies, and so I'd been forced to make it independently and realised the advantages of owning all the rights, controlling the distribution, having complete editorial freedom. And so we came up with a system which we call crowdfunding, and it's basically get a load of people all to invest a small amount of money, and they all own a percentage of the profits. It's the 12th of December, 2004. We're starting Crude, our new documentary, today.
It was a very difficult experience.
Initially, we thought we needed about £50,000 to get going, so we decided to sell 100 shares at £500 each.
Climate change is the most important story of all time because we're all going to die.
What have you got here?
the great masterpiece. Is it? It's the funding document that is going to get those people out there to give us 50 grand to give you, the viewers, the future viewers, a lovely documentary. We don't know what the stories are yet, obviously, because we haven't done the research. That's the next stage. But, for example...
It's amazing we got any money at all, considering Franny's unconventional pitch.
What is crude going to be? So then oil. The problem with oil...
At the end of that first night, we'd raised £37,000, which is more than Franny had used to make her entire film about the Indian dam drowned out.
We were attempting to get a fairly serious, fairly dry subject, climate change, into the multiplexes, and the key part of that is great human stories, great, compelling, lovable humans. So that was the first big mission, really, is to find those people. Radio mics, check.
Good.
Gun mic and mount and fluffy cable. Where's the gun mic? We're getting ready to go to India to find this man here, Mr. J. Woodia. We're starting up. There he is. Possible star of crude, maybe. He was saying the reason he wanted to start an airline is because he wants to end poverty in India, and the way to do that is to get more people travelling. Made for oil, made for oil, made for oil, made for oil.
What's going on? Lying around in a hotel room? Does it sound like much hard work?
We are waiting for a phone call from Jay, or Jay's secretary, which we were promised in 15 minutes at 11 AM. What time is it now?
6:28.
6:28, so that's a
What
long
day is
15
it?
minutes even in Indian time.
We figure we've been phoning for 2 days now. We haven't had any luck. So we're just going to go down there and see if we can just wait around to see him, really.
We keep going in and then he can't meet us, or he's going to meet us in an hour, or then that's cancelled, but come back tomorrow and then come back this afternoon. Basically staking him out now. Okay, how long have you got, by the way?
How long do you need?
40 minutes?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
You know, in the year 2005, I mean, you know, having an elite class who can fly in a country of 1 billion people is ridiculous.
So we've just been filming all day long at the airport, all the Go airplanes flying around and Jay shouting at people and things.
You're saying the PSF is not payable. What's wrong with you?
I mean, I'm scared just filming it.
You're suspended. You're suspended. Both of you come to my office right now.
God knows what they're feeling.
Maintaining my brand means something to me, okay?
We wanted to find a character who was representing the other way of living, as it were, you know, the non-destructive, non-consumer nightmare that all the rest of us are living. And we quite quickly managed to find Piers and Lisa in Cornwall.
Hello, my name's Arthur. Over there is Franny, the filmmaker. Let's go and see her.
They were showing us their animals and how they grow most of their food.
This is a polytunnel.
Coriander? Oh no, that's flat leaf.
No, this is celery. Let me see, who is it who does the Piers also showed us how they convert their cooking oil so it can be used in their car.
If I could stick that in that car now,
Really?
it would run.
Yeah?
And in fact, I might show you just to prove it. It's not running through yet.
It's supposed to smell of chip butts. Looking stinks of diesel. Next day, me and Lizzie got the train back, and I was going on and on about, I'm going to move to Cornwall, I'm going to live in a community like they do, I'm going to grow all my own food and all that. And Lizzie pointed out, if Piers and Lisa could inspire you that much just from one evening, then they're going to do exactly that to everybody who watches the film. And that was exactly the point. We were trying to say that an alternative way of living is more inspiring, you can be happier, you can have nicer children. And so, absolutely, they were the ones for us, no question. we got onto the big subject of climate change, meaning we wanted to find somebody who was witnessing real change happening. We wanted to find a story that really resonated with the middle-class people who were going to be watching this film in the West, basically. And so the Alps, skiing. We're on the Chamonix to find our new character. We've got an appointment today with a 80-year-old mountain guide.
Great.
Sounds rather promising. Fernand. The first time we interviewed Fernand, he said that it was love at first sight when he saw the mountains, and I have to say it was love at first sight for me when I saw him, in terms of the documentary, that is. Not only has he got grandchildren, he's got great-grandchildren, and also he's a real environmentalist. He really understands the issues, and he's still going out on protests and stuff like that.
Tandem bike would have been so good. The only way that we can basically film the bike protest is for me to cycle, have Franny on the back kind of filming, and her barking instructions to me like, get in front of them, and to the left, go to the left to Fernand. I'm just dying on the front of the bike. Every muscle in my body is aching.
Hello. Hello. What's going on here then?
5.1 surround sound mixing. Speakers surrounding us.
This is the music for the bike protest.
We had an idea to do a year-long time-lapse shot so we could show the seasons changing and the snow and all that, which is a pretty tricky thing to do. You've got to get an old camera, you've got to get permission to leave this box on top of the post, you've got to find somebody. We actually put an advert in the local paper to find somebody who wouldn't mind going to this particular place twice a week. That was Ivan.
Bonjour, je m'appelle Ivan. C'est moi qui vais faire donc les prises de vue pour MARTYN.
I think I've probably got a bit too much sky.
I now have the camera set up. This is going to be the shot for the time-lapse behind me. This was the picture I was going off. The hut there, Yeah, so I think it's looking pretty good. Does it look the same?
So anyone who's seen the film will realise that this shot is not actually in the final cut because it just didn't work. Instead we used this one, which Lizzie and I filmed, I think, 8 times, or was it 10 times over the course of a year from a train that runs through the Chamonix Valley. And we had it on this baby, cheap Steadicam thing to try and get rid of the bumps on the train. And then we basically just wrote very, very clear notes about, you know, the height, the shutter speed, exactly how I was holding the camera, the distance from the top of the window, and then in the final edit we just cut from one to the other with a beautiful little fade and a little sound effect. And I thought this was just basically a much more effective way of expressing this idea about how the seasons are changing because of climate change. But unfortunately, what that meant is that Ivan, the poor guy, who went twice a week to film that, oh my God, actually I haven't even told him yet. I have this recurring dream, right, that basically I'm in a helicopter and it's kind of the final moments just before we're smashing into a bridge. The bridge is kind of coming straight up to us. And I'm thinking, oh God, I've wasted my life. I didn't do anything, you know, important and worthwhile with my life. And that's it. And then I'm dead. Since I've had that dream, I've never been in a helicopter. So a real film crew would have a complicated gyroscope thing attached to the helicopter, but we had a bungee cord, no door, and me attached to a security rope thing with my legs dangling out, and so nothing was blocking the shot. So scary! time in my life.
Voilà, petite fissure comme ça.
Oui.
Et tu te tiens en haut.
D'accord.
Ok?
Oui.
Pas difficile.
That's the story. Feet here, hands there, through the little gap. It's not difficult. By this point, having any kind of life whatsoever outside the film was basically impossible. But the one thing that I did manage to do after a 2-year battle with my local council was to squeeze a grant out of them to set up a solar-powered hot water system at my house. And a while later, I found out that the only other person who'd also managed to fight their way through the bureaucracy of the local council was also one of the crew working on The Age of Stupid.
I'm Chris BRIERLEY, I'm a composer, and I've just come round to meet Franny to see what all this crude business is about.
We'd long since spent the 50 grand development money we raised by this point. I think we were in a nice healthy overdraft. So we needed to raise more money, so we decided to have another funding round, and we wanted to cut together a trailer to show the potential funders, and so we need some music for it. So enter my old friend Chris BRIERLEY, who I used to be in a band with. He was the violin player, I was the drummer. And basically I said to him, Chris, what we need is some music that is as hummable as Star Wars. And I want, when everybody's leaving the cinema, I want them all to be singing your theme tune. Should we hear yours then?
There's a piece there, which
What's that?
is in quite a rough state, but I just think you better hear something accelerated. But no, it'd be very extremely rough.
It's great. So the plan now is to go to Nigeria, and the primary story is going to be the outrageousness of the profits of the oil companies and the governments compared to the people living in absolute poverty. Actually, this is my stepmom. She's trying to ban me from going to Nigeria.
Okay, introduction to hostage taken and kidnapped. Some statistics. 15% of hostages are released without payment of ransom. 9% of hostages are killed.
So we've made it to the Niger Delta against all the advice of our friends, family, fellow journalists and security advisors.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Open your eyes. Open your eyes.
Basically, we're on a mission to find our next character for Crude, and what we're looking for is a young woman who is got some sort of story of her own going on. For example, she's leaving home or she's getting married or something like that. Obviously, she's got to be articulate and all that kind of thing. But the hard thing is that because it's a very patriarchal society, it's hard to even get to talk to the women because all the men blah, 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 blah. Just like any other place, really.
When the killings took place, they were thinking that because of that, we are annoyed and we went and killed these people.
We had to pay a bit of token interest in the men and then get on to what we were really there for. And so we would line up all the women, pretty much, and go along and ask them, you know, what had happened to them and get them to explain their story.
We are suffering for food, we are suffering for water, even our children, no good care.
Seeing the suffering that these Nigerian women were going through for basically our luxurious lifestyle was a massive eye-opener.
Somebody else?
Somebody else.
Everybody shouts all the time in Nigeria, and it is so tiring being shouted at. What's your name? Laifa. And so when Laifa came out of the crowd and she just talked at a normal level and calmly described things and was clearly very articulate as well, I just immediately thought she'd be great. And in particular, she had this dramatic, developing narrative that she was trying to get the money for her medical school. But her narrative was directly affected by the oil because the oil was, you know, disturbing the fishing, blah, blah, blah. So she was perfect. Nigeria was, without question, the most dangerous place I've ever been to.
Help! Help!
And there were a lot of incidents, including having big guns pointed at us.
Elbows straight, lean over, and then it's 30 compressions. So it's one.
There were a lot of times when I was thinking back to our survival training and everything that lovely Steve had told us.
If you give us, Steve, one tip, your best tip for surviving in a hostile environment.
Don't go.
The only dangerous incident I managed to get on camera, and that was only because I was filming Laifa fishing at the time, and I hadn't realised that this whole thing was kicking off on the banks. Some young guys were bored because they got no jobs, and they were off their heads on whatever drug they were off their heads on. And they were shouting in their own language, so I didn't know what they were saying. And to be honest, when you're filming, you get a lot of people shouting at you, and you just ignore them and carry on filming. But then Robinson, our fixer, said to me, just, no, stop, no, really stop, and give me the camera. And the look in his eyes made me realise, OK, this is actually quite serious.
They said they will take the two young ladies hostage.
Did they actually say they were going to take us hostage?
Yeah, they're going to take us hostage. And the woman, she said, we will take their blood.
They'll take our blood?
Yeah, we'll take their blood. We'll take their blood this time. We will kill them. What are they coming to do here?
That's great. Good job, mate. Yeah. Thank you for saving us. Well, we landed in America 2 days ago. We were supposed to get here to New Orleans yesterday, I think, but a freak weather incident in Chicago caused all planes to be cancelled, whatever. I wonder what caused that freak weather. Anyway, so then we were in Washington and we were reading USA Today. Here it is. Crime takes hold of New Orleans. So not only, in fact, my dad, before I went, he said, at least I feel safe, you're just going to America, you're not going to Nigeria or Iraq or anything. But no, because not only is New Orleans like the most violent place in the whole of America, but where is the most violent place? Around the Spotted Cat. Can you see that? The Spotted Cat, which is a nice little jazz club over there. There it is, which we've arranged to film our gig in tonight. Apparently there's been 3 people shot, muggings routine, suicide, somebody jumped off a roof, somebody dismembered and cooked the body of his girlfriend, and it's all happening around Spotted Cat.
Here's the light. Here's to love. Here's to you.
Come on, you stupid computer.
I remember reading a book called The Party's Over by Richard Heinberg and just starting to grasp the enormity of the problem that we're facing. He was saying, you know, that there's 6 billion people on the planet at the moment, but actually the planet without fossil fuels can only support about 2 billion. So 4 billion people are going to die. We were in New Orleans, it was after Katrina, about 9 months after Katrina, and we were going around the devastated areas.
There you go. That's what Hurricane Katrina thought of video cassettes. It's probably a copy of McLeod. Yeah, that's what our life's work will be reduced to.
It felt like we were seeing what the world would be like after climate change had really hit. It was like seeing a post-apocalyptic world.
I'll tell you what, if this is the end, if this is what the end of the world looks like, if this is what climate change is going to do to every low-lying city on the planet, it's going to be horrific. Now you know what it looks like. Now we've seen it. Whoa, look at that house.
Franny kind of started to question whether it's a good idea to have kids.
only got to see a place like this to think, do I want my kids to live the horrors that are to come? Would you want your kids to live in there?
Suddenly, I'd gone from working on a film to trying to decide whether I was going to have children or not. Which way are you swinging?
Well, if I had a boyfriend, it might be a more relevant discussion.
In New Orleans, we had an interview lined up with the head of Shell Americas, so we realised that we couldn't wear our usual scruffy attire.
We need to be transformed from what you see before.
Traveling girls to professional girls.
Exactly.
To professional women.
Professional media women.
Okay.
Is it possible? Is this possible?
Of course. Franny, what's your routine in the morning?
It's very short, put it that way.
What'd you think?
Oh yeah, that's better.
Let's see.
That'll be the perfect little hairdo for getting Mr. Shell to tell you everything you want to hear.
That's what you hear.
Could we turn it off? Is that possible?
We were hoping that head of Shell Americas would be our main character, our oil industry character, but...
If you have a seat there, actually, I'm just going to do this out.
He was pretty boring.
Mr. Shell, he was really not up to standard of being a whole character in Crude, we think. Not up to Fernando, Piers or Jay or Leifer's standards. So, we've got to find a new character, because we were hoping he would be, but he's not.
My name is Shelley Payette. I work in
I'm Jill Richardson. I'm a production planner.
My name is Michelle Martin, and I work in the Mergers, Acquisitions, and Divestitures department here at Shell.
What should be the main point for this character?
Well, I don't bloody know, do I? So I'm trying to work out. I'm quite tempted to do the kind of Katrina hero angle. So when you first see them, like there's this guy who did a lot of rescuing, literally rescuing people, 100 people he rescues in a boat after the hurricane. So I'm thinking he could be good. You start with him, you think it's a story about Katrina, he's rescuing people, or you're hearing about he's rescuing people. And then later, maybe the second time we go back to him, you find out that he works for Shell. Because then you, the viewer, will be like, oh, I thought he was the hero. Oh my God, he works for Shell. And then you'll be all confused and all conflicted, and it could be good.
Yeah, right. Guy, push it back!
And then you see it, and you smell it, and, you know, it's greasy and, you know, ugly and smells so much like money. It's just beautiful, you know.
Alvin rescued over 100 people and their pets over 2 long days, including a 95-year-old man and a 6-week-old baby.
And I lost neighbors that I know that we easily could. I drove past their house half a dozen times in the boat, and they were in there bloody dying. So anyway, yeah, there's some really good feelings that you have about that and being able to help people, and then there's a lot of regrets as well. So it's mixed.
Al, he's the man, for sure.
I have genuine, quite strong, very strong concerns about him as a character.
Why?
Because he is so fragile. He's on the point of a nervous breakdown, seriously, and it just worries me what the repercussions could be for him personally. He really can't deal with what he's gone through in that hurricane. He says he's lost his entire humanity, and then we're going to go and make him revisit this. He's got these demons from rescuing people, which he actually did rationally, if you look at it. He did such an amazing thing. He rescued all these people.
Of course he did!
Why is he having these demons?
Yeah.
Why? Because he's the kind of person, he's very thoughtful, he's very insightful, he goes over things a lot.
This is why we want him.
Yeah, but if he goes over being in the film a lot and it screws him up, well, not even being in the film, just if it causes him massive psychological trauma, then that's a really bad thing.
Of course it's a really bad thing. And you don't need to argue as though I'm not agreeing.
Yeah, I know,
it's a bad thing.
I know.
But on the other hand, he'd be a brilliant character for a documentary. Look at these storm clouds.
was really spooky.
Whoa, that was big.
This thunder and lightning, you know in a fiction film when they use the weather to show the emotions of the main characters?
Talk quickly, it's raining on the camera.
It feels like this thunder and lightning crazy storm. It's just after we met Al, and it is just to show what a massive event it was in our lives and that something very dramatic is happening. And it's also reminding Al, because he's having the same thoughts as us.
You look completely crazed.
It's also reminding Al.
It's too raining too hard, the camera's going to get ruined.
Of Katrina. It's reminding Al of Katrina because we're going to make him relive it all. This is some crazy weather.
We'd always thought we should have some animation in this film. You know, we'd never wanted to have narration, and animation is a good way of getting around that. So we basically put together this team of essentially boys in their bedrooms. I think 16 overall, with one girl.
Hello, Lizzie. How are you?
All a bit blue because they've all spent too long in front of their screens. I think the longest was 7 months for the war animation, all at this ridiculously low wage.
Human history is littered with the corpses of people who had stuff worth stealing.
Normally, when you do this kind of thing, you didn't need a very expensive, to do that kind of move, you'd need a very expensive motion control rig. I found an old book with a nice old cover, scanned it into my computer, sort of wrapped it around a book that I bought in Oxfam, and we had the camera here, and then we just pull it out bit by bit. Click, 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 click. At the point when we needed to tip it over backwards, we just had a load of plasticine piled up behind it and gradually took the plasticine away until it was lying flat.
Jonathan said to me, not only have you saved my soul, but you've destroyed my career because I now realise I can never make another commercial again. And I can only work on good ethical projects from now on. And I saw him the other day and he's actually become a teacher, an animation teacher, because there's no ethical animation work.
Lots of ideas have tried to take over the world, but there's only one winner.
Consumerism.
Consumerism. Consumerism. But there's only one winner. Consumerism.
Easy.
Yo.
You're just interrupting her sometimes.
Okay.
It's perfect speed, just leave a gap.
Okay. It's my fault, I was interrupting you. You're doing perfect.
I've always been a fan of the sort of studio map-painted world that used to get in older movies like German Expressionist films and Orson Welles' Citizen Kane, you know, old Hollywood studio movies where they'd create this kind of fabricated universe. And I think we've done, you know, very effectively an updated version of that. We took a photograph of Canary Wharf, used that as a backplate, painted into it digitally, and then we shot elements in the canal in Camden Town, such as this moving bit of polystyrene, and added that to it just to give it discrete amounts of movement, just enough to bring it to life. A few floating leaves, smoke on the horizon.
This in your book. It's very complicated.
This is our record of all the journeys we've ever made to make crude, which is a hell of a lot. We're going to add up how much carbon has been put into the atmosphere as a result of us doing this film, and then we're going to put it at the end of the film. Well, that's my plan anyway. But obviously not just journeys, but we're going to get our electricity bills, gas bills, not that we never ever have the heating on. We could even try and get into embedded energy with the cameras, how many cameras we've bought and trashed, laptops, and then work out how many tons. What would your estimate be? An average person uses about 10 tons a year, but obviously our flying is what will kill it. I would say it'll be about 150 tons.
That's exactly what I was about to say, 150.
I mean, it's the old you've got to make great eggs to make an omelette argument, isn't it? Which I'm sure every single screening of this film we will have people asking us afterwards. You should have used carbon, you used up lots of carbon to make this film, which is true. And my argument, which I'm already rehearsing, is that we're on a one-way, you know, trip to complete annihilation in 30 years. And so obviously we, us, and all the other people who are seriously trying to you know, turn the whole ship around are going to have to use carbon up to try and turn the whole ship around. If we fail, we're all doomed, but if we don't even try, we're also all doomed. So, and not, I certainly don't mean us. I mean all the time.
It's quiet.
Sorry.
All I can hear is your conversation.
Sorry. We are in Jordan, Amman, Jordan, which isn't a place I ever thought I'd go, but I've gone and I'm here, and we are trying to find the 6th and final crewed character who is representing war, and because we don't want to go to Iraq because it's far too dangerous, we decided we're going to find an Iraqi war widow here in Jordan because there's 500,000 refugees here. So we've been wandering the streets, talking to women who are selling cigarettes and stuff. We're going to go to nightclubs to try and find people who are working as prostitutes. And we've been going around loads of different families and asking the terrible question that we always ask, which is basically, has anybody here been raped and speaks English? But in this case, it's, has anybody here lost members of their family to the American and British invasion? And that's it. We're in that nasty stage where we don't know what the hell we're doing and we haven't found anybody, but it's only day 2, so it's feeling okay.
I think we may have found our woman, our character. We talked to quite a few different women, but we finally ended up with Resmia, her name is. She's 38 years old, she's got 4 children. None of them can go to school here, and the 8-year-old, I asked the 8-year-old what she wanted to do, and she wants to be a doctor, I think. She wants to be a teacher. She wants to go to school, and I asked her, what's her favourite activity in life? And she said, I hope there's no war in Iraq. So, this is the kid that's in there? The 8-year-old kid, yeah. Resmia's husband got killed by a bomb from the Americans. He was 45. So, yeah. But we can go and meet her tomorrow at her house.
Can you explain to them that we want to show in the film to the people in England and America that when they use the oil, that this oil has an effect? Lizzie and I both immediately fell in love with the kids because they were just so, even though they'd suffered so much and they were so downtrodden, they were still such brilliant kids. They were so inquisitive, they were obsessed with the camera, they were just mucking around all the time. And funnily enough, when you go back to the original trailer, we had originally thought that we were going to have kids for this story, but we just forgot that somewhere along the way when we got into the idea of the widow. The worst moment of the entire film was when we were near the border waiting for Malik, the older brother who was coming from Baghdad along the world's most dangerous road at that time, and he was supposed to get there at whatever time, and he was 4 hours late and he was out of mobile phone reception. And basically during that 4 hours I just thought that I'd killed somebody because I wanted to make a film about climate change. How can they be not at the border?
If they are before the border, just, you know, the Jordanian phone of the driver.
They've been driving all day, they should be there now. How could what?
You know, just keep driving.
Let's keep calling them anyway.
But just...
Can you keep calling them?
أنا عدنان.
شلونك
مالك.
شلون هسه انت وين؟
بالحدود العراقية.
هسه قاعد احنا نتدورك بنص الحدود الأردنية لعاد.
ما ترفع الحدود باكر.
ماشي.
باكر الحدود السوداء.
احنا لعد نجيك باص ننتظرك بالحدود. الصبح. يلا راح نبات هنا.
And all that had happened is that the car he was in had got stuck behind an American tank, and or a convoy of tanks, and you're not allowed to overtake. Well, if you do, you might get shot. So they just had to go slowly.
What are you wearing?
This was my improvised anti-snoring device at about God knows what time this morning, when he, Adnan, was...
action.
تزبون علي أنت.
وقت شلونك؟ شلونك جميلة؟
Editing. That is a parallel universe which non-filmmakers, obviously, don't understand, don't know about. But the person who really makes the film is the editor. It's so exhausting on your brain, I can't possibly explain it, that firstly you have to eat chocolate and drink Coke constantly, and secondly you can do about 8 hours straight and then you have to sleep for about 4 hours. So it ends up that I start having 2 days in everybody's one day. It's kind of the 8 AM to 2 PM day and then 3 hours. Lose all track of time, all track of reality, and never ever see daylight because I would leave in the morning before it was dark, come back at kind of 2 AM, 3 AM when all the foxes are out, which is quite nice. Anyway, we had a year of this, at the end of which we sat down and watched what we thought was pretty much the final film, 6 interweaving documentary stories, structure of traffic, as we'd always planned.
I thought it was great, you know, I thought it was pretty much ready to be released. But Franny was not satisfied.
I just thought it wasn't pulling, it wasn't punching, it wasn't saying everything I wanted to say. And so I decided that we should rethink.
Ce n'est pas beau.
You know, I was always at the back of my mind that I'd taken all these people's money, and at that point I hadn't made a very good film.
Maintenant, c'est moche.
To me it seemed like we'd basically stalled. I wanted to finish for lots of reasons, but mainly because of climate change. You know, all the time it's getting more and more serious. There's more things in the news saying how urgent the situation is, and we're making this film that we're hoping will have an impact, but so far it's had no impact because we haven't even finished it. So I was kind of always on the, let's get it finished, let's get it finished, let's just get it out there.
After a lot of soul searching, we finally came up with the killer idea, the USP, which is it should be set in the future. Because that is basically what the whole environmental question is about. What we do now has an effect on the future. It's very straightforward. When you hear it now, or when you see it in the final film, you think, why didn't they think of that at the beginning?
We wanted to have the next generation, what are they going to think of us, and what are they going to think when their lives have been ravaged by climate change? Who are they going to blame?
Well, I guess this is my final diary entry. We actually did a mock-up and we filmed it. I wrote the script, and myself and Andy, the assistant editor, played the 2 kids in the future. 94 minutes alive. Anyway, maybe somebody will see this.
We organised a screening of this rough-cut version at the Curzon Soho Cinema in London. So a big cinema screening with about 250 people, all eager to see the film that they'd been, you know, they'd put their money into or they'd worked on. Basically presenting it to them as a done deal. We were like, woohoo, we've basically finished the film. We're just going to show it to you with these tiny bits that need to be replaced.
Damn, we were smart.
That's true, we were.
Well, yeah, there is a small paradox. The cleverest ever species did make the stupidest ever mistake.
Oh, bollocks.
That screening in September 2007 was the worst moment on the entire film because the film just did not work.
Half the world's people were living in poverty before climate change kicked in. It was entirely obvious that nobody wants to be berated by 2 teenage brats in the future, even though what they're saying is entirely true, i.e., you bastards, you destroyed the planet, you left nothing for us, you greedy pigs, you took all the resources. Which is true, but it doesn't really make a pleasant night at the movies.
You could just feel the sense of disappointment in the air. I mean, when people were walking out of the cinema, it was that thing, nobody saying anything, like, you know, when you have a haircut and people kind of say, oh, you're wearing a jacket or something because your haircut's really bad. Even my best friend came out and she said, how did you find the documentary characters? Which was probably the only thing she could think of to say that was nice about the film.
I must admit I'm finding this one slightly difficult, I think. It's a very difficult narrative device to pull off. But I'm behind it.
Everybody hated it pretty much. The worst one for me was my dad, who said that I destroyed the film and it was a disaster, and his wife, my stepmom, said she would be embarrassed to take her friends to go and see the film. That really cut me to the core.
I remember thinking this flatly does not work, will not work, and Franny needs to wake up because it's just not, it's not happening, and it's not going to happen.
I went to see John the next day or whatever, and he said to me that, you know, at least we will probably be able to sell the footage to educational programs like the shots of the Alps and stuff.
It was just so deeply kind of gutting to think that no matter what we did, we would never be able to make it work. That's what everybody was saying. You're never going to be able to make this work.
The next day, one of my exec producers, Bruce, got me out of my deep depression. And by the end of the day, we'd worked out that it wasn't the idea of being in the future that was wrong, it was the kids that were wrong.
I'm leaving now, that's it. You'll never see me ever again.
And what it should be is for my generation in the future, how will we feel knowing that we stood by and did nothing? We had all the information, we just thought, oh, we won't bother trying to save the planet and stop climate change. And then it was going to be a film about regret, about sorrow, about guilt, and that was immediately, it was clearly a much, much better idea.
And straight away we were back on track for just, right, all hands to the deck, okay, we're shooting a drama, it's in the future, there's an old man, he's living in an archive, and it was just back to insanity.
Hi, Lizzie.
Hey, David. So what is this now?
This is going to be the fantastic location for our one-day drama shoot, which we're going to put all the threads that you've been shooting for the past 3 years into some sort of perspective, hence perspective.
Far out. As soon as we decided that it was going to be an older actor, to me, there's only one. I mean, are there any other older actors other than Pete Postlethwaite? Clearly, he was completely out of our league. I mean, he's an Oscar winner and all the rest of it. But I thought I'd just Google him, just on the off chance that he happened to be really into climate change.
There was no option, really. Had to do it.
My idea is to use this kind of screen-based, multi-touch kind of interface.
What are you most worried about?
Matching the movement of this actor and the animation.
Okay, standing by, please. Turn over. Speed. Okay. 19, take 2. And action.
We wouldn't be the first life form to wipe itself out. But what would be unique about us is that we did it knowingly. I mean, what does that say about us? The question I've been asking is, why didn't we save ourselves when we had the chance? Is the answer because, on some level, we weren't sure if we were worth saving?
And cut, thank you. Got it. Okay, stand by. And turn over.
Nine months after the disastrous screening, we had our finished film, and we once again booked the Curzon Soho Cinema in London and got all of our crew investors along.
You know, if any of you have got any suggestions or comments or anything like that, any little changes or anything, don't tell me them because it's finished.
What state of mind were we in to face extinction? Simply shrug it off.
It was brilliant. It was worth all the pain.
People were crying, people were laughing, and I was profoundly moved by it, and I was just sort of amazed by how my concerns about however ambitious and everything that had been were completely dispensed with, and I just thought, holy smoke, we've done it.
I think I remember crying a tiny little bit in Inconvenient Truth, but today I was weeping, full weeping.
I thought it was the most powerful thing I've ever seen in my life. It was just devastating. I've just been in the toilets and seeing other women like splashing their faces with water and redoing all their makeup because they've all been crying as well.
The guy, I forget his name, but who works for the oil company in New Orleans, you know, he was brilliant because he so perfectly embodied the contradictions of our society.
It's not a film to make you happy. It's a film that makes you sit back and think, you know, what is my role?
on this planet in a way. It's one of those profound kind of stargazing moments.
Realistically, people my age, 18, 19, we don't think of what could that actually happen.
It actually is making me think about changing my career.
The thought that there is no future, it's terrible, really.
I was totally blown away by it. It's a fantastic film, and everybody should see it. Everybody should see this film and get out and do something about it afterwards.
Stunned. I think to pack that much information, detail and fact into a film that is exciting, moving, keeps you engaged all the way through is phenomenal. It's an extraordinary achievement.
I think this film has an amazing potential to reach people right across the world. It is incredibly accessible, it's funny, it's wise, it's tender, it's scary, it is powerful, and I think the message that goes along with the film is that we can make a difference, that the time is now, that to be part of this generation living as we do is both an enormous responsibility but also an enormous opportunity, because we are the ones who can make a difference. And I defy anybody to come out of that film and not feel that they've got to make a difference too.
What about the one about the company?
Yeah, this is it.
Here we go. Do I think films can change the world? I don't think there's anything that can change the world more. I mean, it sounds ridiculous, but in terms of being able to get your idea or your philosophy out to the maximum number of people with the least editorial restrictions and the most emotion, because obviously you can pack into a film, you've got the emotion, you've got music, you've got graphics, it's a multimedia format. So yeah, if you want to change the world, make independent documentaries, that's what I reckon. We made something which is everything I ever wanted it to be. In fact, it's more than I could have ever wanted it to be, thanks to the characters, thanks to the humans being more than I could have ever wanted. And I really feel like I've said everything I ever wanted to say, and I can retire.
Sell it, girl.
No, I'd call this geologic period the stupid age.
Remember that. Hold that thought. Hold that thought.